Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. It is time for our weekly track roundup, where I go over what I felt were the best and worst tracks of the week. Remember that this segment is sponsored by the good people over at the Ridge Wallet. They make these fantastic RFID blocking metal-plated wallets. Replace your disgusting, bulky leather wallet today. Hit up the link down below. Use promo code MELON to get 10% off your first order. And remember, I am the #1 minimalist wallet salesman in the world. Okay, that is my title. It's me. That's me. Also, shout out to our Amazon and Turntable Lab associate links down below. You can hit up those links, especially that Turntable Lab one. Get some colorful vinyl of some records we have reviewed on the channel. We get kickback from it. And I also want to give a shout out to some Kurt Vile Spotify singles that have dropped, specifically a Rolling Stones cover that we have linked down below, along with all of the other tracks we are talking about in this segment. So, worst tracks of the week. Believe it or not, there were quite a few. This was not a particularly great week for music. I mean, look, there were a lot of songs, as you'll see later in the segment, that were very good this week. Very entertaining songs. But some of the biggest tracks to drop this week were some of the worst and most awful. First off, Tyga has dropped a boring, drab, run-of-the-mill, uninteresting new single titled Goddamn. It's about as bland and by the numbers and completely devoid of anything memorable as Tyga's music usually is. This track doesn't even really have that strong of a chorus to it. You know, you could at least say some of his recent works that have blown up at least had, some good music videos with tons of asses shaking in every direction. But this new single over here is really kind of lacking the kind of hard-hitting groove that would, I don't know, even excite someone to move their butt even a little. But moving on from there, Modest Mouse has dropped another single from this forthcoming album, and Isaac Brock is striking out once again on this new track titled I'm Still Here. Last single sounded like a 10-car pileup of a bunch of alternative rock and pop genres that should not be mixing. This new track over here is just kind of like very boring, run-of-the-mill lo-fi garage rock, which is stylistically not really Isaac's strong suit, frankly. Appreciate that he tried it, I guess, but sounds like a total mess to me. Moving on from there, Madonna has a brand new single with Maluma and an artist prior to this track I'm unfamiliar with, I admit. But still, Madonna's very touched up and underwhelming voice on this thing is just pretty much riding a very bland Latin pop instrumental. She's just trying to cash in on the current popularity of Latin pop at the moment, and I don't know. There's not really much to comment on beyond that. There's not really a whole lot of substance to this track, sadly. Oh, and here's a doozy. The worst song of the week. Look, everyone, it's the worst song of the week. It's actually so bad, it might be the worst song of the month. And depending on how the rest of the year plays out, it could potentially be the worst song of the year. It's this new Lil Dicky song titled Earth, where it's just a cavalcade of celebrities lined up just making a bunch of dumb proclamations like some of the stupidest moments out of Dicky's collaborative track with Chris Brown, where you have just, random celebrities popping on and saying, oh, I'm a raccoon, I'm a squirrel, I'm trying to get my next nut, woo! And it's supposed to be this track that's, I guess, about loving the earth and loving the environment, but it's it's a total jerk-off fest that's completely pointless and stupid and inane and assumes its audience is nearly brain dead. Like this, I guess, environmentalist pop rap song does little to nothing, I would actually say absolutely nothing, in terms of addressing the environmental issues our planet and we as a species currently face. Doesn't really address any of the underlying contributors to those problems, doesn't really propose or address any solutions. It's kind of like, we love the earth, we love the earth. Not like, paraphrasing there. We love the earth. Oh, I'm a boar. Oh, I'm a zebra. I'm black and white. Oh, I'm this animal. Oh, I'm that animal. Like, as a song, compositionally, it's total shit. As a joke song, it's not even funny. As an environmentalist message or credo, it communicates little to nothing. There's really nothing redeeming about this track. It just sucks. It just sucks. It might, again, be the worst song of the year. Not only because, again, as just a song on its own, there's really nothing to it. And as far as like a message or an idea or a concept, it doesn't really bring anything substantive to the table. So, yeah, it's just garbage. Moving on from there, there's also a pretty new garbage track from French Montana featuring Lil Tjay and Blueface, where the instrumental's a total mess, especially with this random G-funk beat switch at one point. French Montana's flows just bite. Lil Tjay's vocals on the track are horrendous and difficult to listen to. I would say the only redeeming factor on the whole song is actually Blueface, but he comes in toward the very end, and it's not even like the best guest verse he's ever laid down. So, moving on from there. Oh, and this. How can we forget about this? A new Beck track featuring Pharrell, or at least Pharrell took part in the track. And this one is titled "Saw Lightning," and I don't know. In a way, I guess I could appreciate Beck instrumentally as kind of trying to go back to his quirky roots by bringing together these elements of rock and pop and country and hip hop into a kind of funky and strange mix. But man, is the production on this thing clunky and not very fulfilling. Man, is Beck's songwriting on this track lackluster. The refrains that he lays all over this song are utterly ridiculous, and I don't know, some of his silliest and most unlikable in a long, long time. In a way, this track almost makes me miss when he was just making boring music, because at least you could say that had some maturity to it on the writing side of things. But yeah, not really feeling this one, sadly. All right, let's move on to the tracks I was kind of met on this week. I wasn't blown away by them, but they were certainly worth pointing out, certainly worth pointing you toward. First off, we have this brand new track over here with Smokepurpp featuring production from Kenny Beats and Boys Noize. Beat goes hard, Smokepurpp sounds kind of savage on the song, but overall it just kind of sounds like another very aggressive piece of SoundCloud rap that is really just kind of spinning its wheels in the mud. Moving on from there, Sebadoh has another new track out. If you are into very winding and somewhat abstract indie rock that's kind of heavy and a little hard-hitting, I think you will like this single. I love their last one a little bit more, but this new one over here, Raging River, is quality as well. Also, Health has collaborated with GHOSTMANE on a brand new track. I am loving that the industrial noise pop outfit is continuing their string of collaborations that they have been making a lot of noise with over the past like half a year or so, maybe a little bit longer. This new one with GHOSTMANE is another hip-hop oriented one, although I've never really been a big GHOSTMANE fan. I think partially the reason that is due to the strange, I don't know, pitch shifts in his voice on this track. Some of the nasally passages on this song are kind of laughable, and some of the sung vocals on here, some of the scream vocals just come off really melodramatic, and I don't really care for it all that much. But hey, if GHOSTMANE is your thing, you'll most likely enjoy hearing him over a more industrial, heavier, somewhat more experimental backdrop, because Health certainly provides that. Moving on from there, Full of Hell has a brand new track out, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, Silmaril. Again, not a term I'm familiar with or anything like that, but it is a very brutal, grinding, hard-hitting, disgusting track that kind of just breezes by in 1 minute. It's kind of a blur, unfortunately, outside of some of the weird, slow, Cro-Magnon crushing riffs and the breakdown after like the second half of the song. But but that point in the track I wasn't really that impressed with. Maybe it'll blow me away a bit more in the context of the record. But just as kind of like a standalone 1 minute cut, it's kind of hard to get like a real feel of the track, unfortunately. But still, Full of Hell, new record on the way. They sound just as nasty as ever. Foxygen has also dropped a brand new track this week titled Work, which I feel like I'm a little on the fence with because I'm still making heads or tails of it a bit. There were some elements of, I think, like maybe some old school hard rock and new wave that might have been mixed into this track, but the mixing and the way the lead vocals and the background vocals sync up just feels so clunky and awkward, like the instrumentation and the vocals really aren't gelling all that well. Obviously, at this point, given Foxygen's knack for production and songwriting on previous efforts, I assume anything that ends up on a Foxygen record is just, intentional at this point. But maybe the genius of this somewhat more abstract and cacophonous way of mixing this track together is eluding me at the moment, I guess. But as of right now, I'm just kind of left scratching my head, wondering why it just kind of sounds like, a bit of a tangled mess. Moving on from there, Flying Lotus has a new album on the way, and it's going to be a pretty lengthy one. And to tease toward this record, he has seen fit to drop a spoken word track featuring David Lynch, which isn't exactly like the kind of futuristic hip-hop infused and jazz infused production that we know Flying Lotus for. It's just kind of a strange, very cinematic, weird, disturbing bit of soundtrack music with David Lynch on top telling a very odd story. And there are a lot of elements about it that I like, but I don't know. I'm hoping that I end up enjoying the more, I guess, music-oriented songs, more compositionally intensive songs a bit more. I mean, it's a good taster. It's a good teaser, but not exactly an exciting single I'm going to be playing over and over and over until the album's out. Moving on from there, CupcakKe has seen fit to drop a remix of frickin' Old Town Road, Lil Nas X. I love a lot of CupcakKe's bars on this track, but the way that her voice was chorused and doubled up on the song made it completely obnoxious and almost impossible to listen to. Again, I probably would hear it again just to kind of get some more of the bars and just to, sort of laugh at a lot of what CupcakKe is saying on the track, which is incredibly explicit. It is CupcakKe. But again, I think the mixing of this track and the way the vocals were handled really kind of kneecapped the full potential of the remix. Moving on from there, 070 Shake has dropped a few singles as well. And Morrow and Nice to Have are the tracks in question. And it's very sterile, very beat-centric and spacey art pop. Shake's vocals didn't really stun me on this record as much as it had when she was kind of crossing over with Kanye, sort of wondering where exactly her music is moving at this point. But the moment I have an opinion on what she's going to be putting out into the future, I will sort of make sure to throw it out there. And let's move on to the tracks that I thought were the best this week. Valee, you guys remember this guy gave a review to his little EP that he dropped not too long ago, and it was quite negative as what exactly this dude's appeal was. Just wasn't really coming through on that project. You and Me Both, though, lyrically doesn't really seem to be, I guess, diverting from what we've heard him rap about up until this point. I mean, material things, fashion, clothing, so on and so forth. However, the very minimal and low-key delivery and flow on this track, combined with the somewhat experimental and weird trap beat, actually makes for a pretty interesting listen. I like this track quite a bit. Moving on from there, Saint Vitus, the legendary doom metal outfit, has dropped a song called Useless, which is 1 minute and 34 seconds, shockingly. And it is like a crossover between just heavy metal and hardcore punk. Think like if Motorhead was trying to write the scuzziest, most disgusting hardcore punk song imaginable, with some very lo-fi and very gruesome production. That's kind of what this track is vibing like, and I love it. It's actually a big surprise from Saint Vitus, frankly. Moving on from there, Mavis Staples has dropped another track that is pretty fantastic. Anytime is the name of this new one, and it is a very soulful piece of blues rock that has some great backup vocals, very rustic but quality production as well. Mavis's vocal performances is very enjoyable. Let me see. Moving on from there, we have another track from Kevin Morby, who I shouted out in a previous episode of the weekly track roundup for a new single that sounded like a very odd take on the sounds of Lou Reed. This new one over here, this new single, OMG Rock and Roll, is another track where Kevin enjoyably is just, in a very absurd fashion, turning rock and roll inside out. And I love his kind of weird tongue-in-cheek approach to reviving the sound of this genre. And I don't know, I'm just like really pleased and impressed with the results so far. It just kind of seems like a really creative take on, you know, the classic sounds of rock music, and just kind of updating it for a very weird era. Kevin Abstract has dropped another single from his album that he's kind of like dropping in pieces. We had the Arizona Baby single, and now we have this Ghetto Baby EP, and then that's going to kind of culminate into another project that is dropping very soon, dropping this week pretty much. I have, been enjoying everything for the most part that he's dropped up until this point, with a few exceptions of songs that are a little underwhelming to me. And this new track, Baby Boy, of this latest batch of songs is easily my favorite. Beautiful ballad and wonderful mix of R&B and singer-songwriter music and pop and hip-hop, basically that very unique blend of sounds and styles that made Kevin's American Boyfriend so special, all come together on this track over here. Amazing vocal feature from Kevin Beatty, or Ryan Beatty, excuse me. I'm thinking Kevin Abstract in my head, so I thought Kevin. Ryan Beatty on this track, and he just sounds phenomenal on the cut. It's a very passionate, beautiful song. Lavish production as well. Kevin, not only with Ramil, has Jack Antonoff of Bleachers fame in the fold on the production here. So, of course, this song is sounding immaculate as a result of that. So really loving this track. Really loving this single. Very impressed with it. Moving on from there, we have a brand new Injury Reserve song too, Koruna and Lime. It is a lyrical, odd, quirky banger that kicks off the trio's latest full-length album, which is dropping very soon, and you can expect a review out for that as soon as that comes out, so be on the lookout for that. Ba-bam! And also a shout-out to this wonderful new Fortet song, Teenage Birdsong, which seems to see Kieran Hebden going back to his days where he was kind of fusing, not only electronic beats and sort of influences from the worlds of house and techno together, but also like some acoustic noises and some more natural and I guess kind of, more organic tones and timbres in what he's doing. And it's, again, it's kind of beautiful to hear him kind of go back in that direction again, because I think the results are pretty fantastic, again, on this Teenage Bird song track. Moving on from there, we have the Flaming Lips. A song has been dropped onto the internet as a single from their new record, which I guess was dropped as a small run vinyl release this past Record Store Day. So there are Flaming Lips fans out there with this Flaming Lips record in their hands, which I guess is going to see a wider release in July. And this track over here is a very beautiful piece of experimental psychedelic folk, good balladry at the core of the song, very pretty and compelling vocals, love the eerie atmosphere of the track too. It is pretty, it is unsettling, it is Flaming Lips. And also want to give a shout out to this new Earth track over here. Was a little underwhelmed by the project's last single for its forthcoming album, but this new one, The Color of Poison, is actually kind of unique for Dylan Carlson and the gang. The kind of start-stop guitar licks on this one certainly make it a very weird and odd standout in the Earth discography, especially since up until this point, droning and just giving the audience as much consistent sound as possible has sort of been Earth's MO, and now they really kind of break that up in a very creative fashion on this new track over here that is pretty stimulating, even if some of the riffs are a little meat and potatoes and predictable for Earth. All right, Carly Rae Jepsen has dropped a brand new single as well, new album on the way. Julien is the name of this new one, and it's definitely, I think, my favorite so far from this upcoming album cycle. It's a pretty sweet piece of synth pop with a very modern production background behind it. Very punchy, very sweet, very nice on the ears. And that has been it for our weekly track roundup, everybody. Remember, all of the tracks that I talked about in this video are linked down below. You are the best. Shout out once more to the Ridge for sponsoring this series, this segment. Link down below for them. And as I already said, link down below for all the songs too. And we'll see you in the next one. Anthony Fantano, weekly track roundup forever. Bye-bye!